Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming to the 2009 Senior Thesis Poster Session. This is the culmination of a year worth of hard work for seniors in 3 departments here at Columbia and Barnard. That's the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Environmental Biology, or E3B, Earth and Environmental Science, or Ds, and the Department of Environmental Science at Barnard College. So each of these students has been working closely with a research mentor, either at Columbia or some other academic institution, on projects which you will hear about in a 1-minute slide, and then each of those projects is presented in a poster. So we encourage you to stay around afterwards, visit those posters, and ask follow-up questions. Yes, it really is 1 minute. It seems amazing to think that they can summarize a year's work in 1 minute, but they do so beautifully. We think it's a nice way to give an overview of the breadth of the work that happens here. Besides working with their research mentors, they work closely with 4 faculty members in those 3 departments. Myself, Matt Palmer in E3B, Stephanie Furman and Brian Mayu and Martin Stuta. They traded off in the middle of the year from the Barnard, and Meredith Nettles from Ds. Those are the 4 faculty affiliated with this program. The students will come by and give their 1-minute presentations in order. We ask you to hold your applause in between so we can keep that smooth. We'll give applause to everybody at the end, and then again the poster session and refreshments will happen after that. In addition to the mentors, the students, and the course faculty, we'd also like to thank the Office of the Provost at Barnard College and the Earth Institute at Columbia for funding for the event. And thanks to all of you for coming, for supporting, and for those of you who have raised some of these bright young scientists' wonderful work. So, let's begin. Is this on? All right.
Ready? Okay. My name's Erin McMahon, and my thesis regards arsenic contamination at EPA Superfund site in Vinland, New Jersey. The current remediation strategy is a pump and treat system, and this operates by pumping contaminated groundwater to a treatment plant where it's cleaned and then distributed to a local Blackwater branch stream. However, this system is both costly and it removes only a fraction of the arsenic in the soil. My thesis evaluates the effectiveness in 2 ways. First, I mapped the arsenic concentration, the arsenic plumes over time, and this is actually an example of one of the interpolations I created. And second, I determined the total dissolved arsenic in the groundwater during the initial and the final period. And my findings include how arsenic concentrations vary with depth, and how other remediation strategies have affected the site. Overall, my thesis evaluates the current and future, it will serve as a reference point for the EPA to evaluate their current and future remediation efforts. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Berkus, and for my thesis, I looked at the potential for farms in the Hudson Valley to sequester carbon in their soils. While conventional agricultural practices cause carbon dioxide to be emitted into the atmosphere, certain practices, such as conservation tillage and rotational grazing, allow carbon to be stored in farm soils. I was able to discover the magnitude and characteristics of farming in the Hudson Valley through the creation of GIS maps. I then used the carbon model, COMET-VR, to calculate rates of carbon sequestration. I found that if farms in the Hudson Valley continue to use conventional agriculture, it will cause 60,000 tons of carbon dioxide to be emitted into the atmosphere each year. If, however, these farms convert to better practices, they will allow up to 700,000 tons of carbon dioxide to be taken out of the atmosphere and stored in the soil. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Allyson Powell, and my project focused on reducing emissions on agricultural lands in the Hudson Valley. As Sarah explained, farmers have the potential to sequester carbon in their soils by using rotational grazing and reduced tillage. They also have the potential to reduce emissions by using what I call best mitigation practices, such as photovoltaics, waste management, methane capture and combustion, use of biofuel, etc. My project focuses on these methods and explores how economic incentives can promote changes on farms in the Hudson Valley. I interviewed farmers and stakeholders, created whole farm planning schemes, and assessed existing programs so that I could create a recommended program that includes business sponsorship and offsetting, as well as holistic farm assessment, so that full sequestration and reduction potentials can be fully realized. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Caroline Silver. My project, Prioritizing Environmental Concerns in Thailand, Cambodia, a look at objective national and transnational factors, examines state preferences for environmental protection in the Greater Mekong subregion. That's actually a picture I took on the Mekong last spring. Specifically for fish, water, and forest resources in Thailand, Cambodia. I tested for other pressures on environmental prioritizing when conditions of the environment did not correlate to the ranking placement of these resources. I found that environmental preferences were influenced by the role of NGOs, the Asian Development Bank, the Global Environmental Facility, and the interplay between public and private interests in Thailand and Cambodia. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Broder, and my project was on the future of electric vehicles and challenges for infrastructure. I was lucky to work with Albert Boulanger and Roger Anderson. Transportation is one of the most energy-intensive industries, and additionally, internal combustion vehicles emit a great deal of carbon dioxide and noxious gases. Electric vehicles are one alternative mode of transportation. However, current infrastructure does not support their wide-scale implementation. My project proposed an electric vehicle-friendly garage at Columbia University. I found that current infrastructure would not support 10% market penetration over 10 years and would require additional electrical infrastructure. Additionally, I found that the success of this garage, in addition to electric vehicles in general, would be greatly increased with alternative energy resources and smart grid technology development. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laronde Seelig, and my project dealt with identifying inefficiencies in Barnard's toilet system and then offering a solution. Water conservation through toilets is an important issue to address, as toilets consume approximately 30% of the water that we use. 94 toilets across campus were flushed, and then the water was extracted and measured for each of them. The main inefficiency of the school's toilet system was identified as subpar flush outputs, and a recommendation was made to retrofit dual flush handles that would allow a maximum output of 1.6 gallons per flush onto existing fixtures and increase maintenance by facility services as the solution that would save water and energy in the future. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mason, and I'm a senior in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. And my project deals with green energy potential of Coal River Mountain, West Virginia, specifically comparing coal and wind energy potential of a 328 megawatt wind farm and 3 proposed surface mines, and factoring in environmental costs. I estimated that it will take approximately 100 years for wind energy to produce the same amount of available coal energy that's already in the ground. However, factoring in environmental impacts of mining, like water and air pollution, the total payback time can be reduced to under 50 years, potentially allowing wind energy to become a more viable alternative. Thank you.
Hi, we are faced with weather every second, but do we understand it? My name is Yvonne Chu, and I conducted a survey to test which weather concepts people understand the least. My findings show that sky cover, such as partly cloudy and partly sunny, are pretty confusing. If you see these graphics up here, you might understand why. The same graphic is used to represent different sky cover conditions. In response to my findings, I created an educational video and graphics of my own to improve clarity of sky condition graphics. So come check out my poster. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Gary Mesko, and my thesis is on the origin of the Texaco basalt lava flow and its origins, implications for arc magma formation. I'd like to thank Suzanne Straub, who could be here today. The Mexican volcanic belt is unique in that it contains ocean interplate basalt flows throughout, and that is evidence of plate extension. The Texaco is one of these and is a great candidate for chemical analysis because it is quite new, 700 years young. We analyzed the chemical composition of the rock and found through helium analysis that instead of a primitive mantle unmetasomatized source, it is actually more of a enriched morb, and that the mantle sources vary greatly throughout the Mexican volcanic belt. Thank you.
I'm Stephen Cox. The Gamburtsev subglacial mountains are located in the middle of the Eastern Arctic Craton. They are extremely enigmatic because the Eastern Arctic Craton is thought to be very tectonically inactive. However, the mountains are still very tall. They're about the size of the Alps. Since the mountains are covered by several kilometers of ice, we use detrital sediments from downstream in Prids Bay to measure the low-temperature thermochronology of the mountains and the surrounding basin, and to calculate a basin-wide erosion rate. We found that erosion rates in the basin are very low, which allows for the possibility that the mountains are in fact very old and have simply been eroding very slowly since they formed.
Hi everyone, my name is Ilana Sundaram from D's. I worked with Steve Goldstein and Nick Chrissy Blake. My project concerns strontium isotope geochronology, which is one way we use to date shells of marine origin. We ultimately want to be able to compare the sedimentary cyclicity in a region of active deformation, the Gulf of Suez, with another region whose cyclicity is well known and closely tied to sea level change. And in order to know anything about timing, we need dates. So I tested the strontium isotope geochronologic technique on samples from a single stratigraphic section of an outcrop in the Gulf of Suez. All samples dated in the earliest Miocene as expected, but as you can see from the stratigraphic diagram, samples seem to be out of order. But since we expect that geology rather than chemistry is the cause of this problem, running more samples is likely to mitigate this issue. So it seems that strontium isotope geochronology is a promising technique for samples in this region.
Hello, my name is Ekaterina Alexandrov, and my senior thesis project is on cadmium and molybdenum in laminated sediments from Soledad Basin, which is located off the coast of Baja California. Cadmium and molybdenum are redox-sensitive metals, and their abundance in the sediment is believed to be indicative of the conditions in the overlying waters. For my project, I looked at two well-dated sediment cores, which were sampled at different resolution. And based on the data I obtained, which you can see behind me, I was able to show that both sampling resolutions are sufficient to create a high-resolution paleoclimate record. Based on what we know about the behavior of these elements, I was able to draw inferences about the conditions of the overlying waters at the time of deposition for the time period covered by the cores. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Yes? Good afternoon. My name is Priya Murthy, and my project today is on haze in the Alaskan Arctic. And so this is an interesting story. Basically, pollutants are transported from the mid-latitudes thousands of kilometers up to the Arctic, and they're trapped there in the cold and dark atmosphere. They accumulate to create a seasonal haze. The haze is important because it affects the radiation balance in a really sensitive ecosystem, and it has the potential to cause short-term warming in the world's fastest warming region. So my project concerned looking at data from 4 sampling sites throughout Alaska and comparing the observations of the air quality from these sample sites to the projections from a model, a state-of-the-art model at NASA GISS. And as you can see from the graphic, the model severely underestimated the actual observed Arctic pollution. So this actually signifies that scientific understanding is really lacking in this area. And by closely examining the discrepancies that I observed, I found that this could be because models don't understand the actual large degree of input of aerosols into the Alaskan system, as well as regional variability throughout Alaska. Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Yasemin, and my thesis research is on the temporal variability of 2 greenhouse gases, SF6 and SF5CF3. I wanted to find out whether SF5CF3 has the necessary properties to be used extensively as a tracer like SF6, what its sources are, and whether SF6 production and use in the industry are its dominant sources. As you can see from the time series that I generated using gas chromatography, SF5CF3 is well mixed in the atmosphere with little short-term variation. It is unaffected by atmospheric conditions, and it did not correlate with the SF6 signal obtained during the same time period. Therefore, although I could not pinpoint any local sources of SF5CF3, my work shows that SF6 production and use are not its dominant sources in this region, and that it does have the necessary properties to be a good tracer. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liz Logan. I'm in the Department of Earth and Environmental Science at Columbia College. My research focused on tracking mesoscale eddies in an ocean model. Mesoscale eddies are circulating pools of water approximately 100 kilometers wide, traveling in the upper ocean, and impact fields as far-reaching as marine biology and the cryosphere, as well as being important to ocean general circulation. There is currently an ongoing debate regarding the speeds at which eddies travel. Observation has seen that, by and large, these mesoscale eddies propagate much faster than would be predicted theoretically. This project seeks to address the question, and we have found that, in conclusion, indeed, mesoscale eddies propagate much faster than what would be predicted even in an ocean model. These results are important in light of eddy impact on ocean general circulation and climate change in general in the years to come. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ekaterina Alexandrov. Scientists across the world are trying to understand natural arsenic release in groundwater, which is seen throughout most of Southeast Asia and causes numerous health defects. Arsenic release is poorly understood, but a number of mechanisms have been proposed, all of which involve microbial activity. Our study site is in Bangladesh, about 100 kilometers east of Dhaka, located on an arsenic gradient. As the map on the left shows, we worked at 2 sites. They're located only 2 miles away from each other, but one has high arsenic content and one has low arsenic content. We analyzed the microbial diversity and hypothesized that certain mechanisms that are dominant would indicate prevalence of their function. Surprisingly, we saw uniformity in the microbial communities across the 2 sites, which suggests that certain mechanisms that are currently considered especially important, such as iron reduction, may actually have a lesser effect on arsenic release.
Hi, I'm Simon Lax, and for my thesis project, I studied the microbial diversity of deep-sea sediment cores taken from the Cascadia margin off the coast of Western Canada. Although the microbes that live beneath the ocean floor constitute the largest biomass on Earth, we still know very little about their overall diversity and how that diversity varies with depth. In the study, 480 16S DNA sequences were isolated from sediments 6 meters and 200 meters below the ocean floor, as well as from sediment cultures initiated from those same sediments and selecting for denitrifying and sulfate-reducing metabolic pathways. All of the sequences were found to belong to members of the phylum Proteobacteria, and especially the alpha, gamma, and epsilon classes of it. In particular, the genus Pseudoalteromonas, which is a part of the gamma Proteobacteria, was found to be particularly cosmopolitan and capable of multiple metabolic pathways. And finally, in keeping with previous subsea floor ecology research, overall diversity was found to decrease with depth. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Hirsch. I'm a student of environmental biology in Columbia College. This past summer, I spent 3 months in the Philippines collecting and analyzing samples of 2 scleractinian, or stony reef-building corals, Seriatopora hystrix at the top and Postulopora damicornis at the bottom. Using microsatellite loci, which code for what may be called nonsense DNA, we were able to track population diversity in 3 separate populations, Bolinao, Romblon, and Sorsogon, as well as recruitment and gene flow between these populations. A few different programs were used, such as Structure and GenBMap. The structure graphs are at the center, and the GenBMap is at the corner. Different colors indicate different families of genes. And in the GenBMap, areas of white show a genetic barrier to the areas of green. So we can see that Bolinao, the area that's completely different, is in fact separated from Romblon and Sorsogon and fails to recruit from those areas.
Hi,
I'm Saracina Littlebird, and I studied fish and the cultural beliefs behind fishing practices in the Peruvian Amazon. Fish are a really crucial resource for the people in this area, both for subsistence and as a source of income, and fish stocks are currently showing signs of being overharvested. So I wanted to see if cultural beliefs that could be used to regulate fishing behavior existed in this area. Through a series of ethnographic interviews and a rough assessment of the status of the fishery, I found that while the cultural beliefs are still very much present in the area, they no longer serve their regulatory function in terms of fishing practices. So my recommendation at this point would be to increase education initiatives to help the people affected understand the consequences of overharvest.
Hello everyone, my name is Theo Cruz and my thesis project is called The Impact of Urbanization Along an Urban to Rural Gradient. A previous study was done showing that city trees grow better than those grown in more rural areas. My thesis stemmed from this, except we looked at red oak plants because they are more representative of the northeastern forest. We want to know exactly why city trees grow better than those in more rural areas, and we think this might be due to temperature or higher ozone content found in suburbs.
Hello, my name is Bradley Marshall, and my project was on snow cover and changes in alpine plant distribution in New Zealand. This is important because global climate change is expected to have a disproportionate impact on alpine areas, which is important because snow cover acts as an insulating layer for plants in these areas. So in 2003, 2 field sites were set up in the Pisa Range, which is pictured here, and the distribution of the plants was assessed. Then snow fences were put up to redistribute the snow cover, and the snow cover was assessed several times between 2003 and 2007 when the plant cover was reassessed. This data was collected by multiple people, and I evaluated this data and found that snow cover had a significant impact on the redistribution of the plants. I also froze some plants at various temperatures, including -15 degrees Celsius, which, and it indicated that these plants could be killed by temperatures this cold without insulation, which these areas do receive during the winter. I hope that this research will contribute to the growing literature on the expected impact that climate change might have on this important ecosystem. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Meredith Martin, and for my thesis, I researched the effects of management and vegetation on agave cupreata populations in rural Mexico. Agave cupreata is a plant that's harvested by local communities in order to produce mezcal, which is a culturally important liquor similar to tequila. However, unlike tequila, which is grown using large-scale monoculture, these local communities harvest the plant directly from surrounding dry tropical forests, which the plant is native to. These tropical forests are rapidly disappearing, but are an important ecosystem that contain high levels of biodiversity and endemism. And in fact, when this plant is present in an area, often the community will leave that area forested in order to maintain access to this resource. So for my study, I collected data from 4 different types of vegetation in both private and communal lands. And we found that, in fact, in areas that were most intensively managed, the agave cupreata densities were the highest. So this implies that the local communities are using effective techniques to prevent overharvest and to ensure the regeneration of the populations. And hopefully this information can be incorporated into a sustainable management plan in the future.
Hi, my name is Jason Patinkin, and in my research I studied the health of 2 species of threatened Amazon river turtles in Peru. I assessed health through looking at various blood parameters as well as the gastrointestinal parasite communities of these turtles. In both turtles, there were found to be 4 species of gastrointestinal parasites. One species had higher loads of parasites, whereas the other species had much more complex parasite communities. However, in both cases, neither species appeared to show an effect in the blood of these parasite communities, leading me to possibly conclude that the current levels of parasites in these turtles are normal or perhaps background levels that aren't affecting the health yet. However, further research will be necessary to determine the effect of parasitism in these turtles, especially as their populations decline and are confined to higher density protected areas. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Olivia Tandon, and I studied social behavior in captive lesser birds of paradise.
Zoos are very interested in studies of animal behavior because they strive to maintain as many natural behaviors in their animals as possible. And especially with social animals, like the lesser bird of paradise, their behavior and social structures often change in a captive environment. Lesser birds of paradise are a lek breeding species, meaning that males gather together in groups of 2 to 30 animals, while females live solitarily and come to the lek site only when they're ready to mate. This social structure is impossible to recreate in a captive environment. In this study, I visited 4 zoos across the country, and I showed the birds there video of wild birds of paradise displaying, and I was looking to see whether video was an effective method of simulating a lek environment in captivity. There was a low statistical power in the study, so I wasn't able to draw any definite conclusions. However, since my study completed, one of the male birds here at the Bronx Zoo, who had never been observed to copulate before, has produced 3 fertile eggs.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Kelly. I spent last summer in beautiful coastal New Hampshire studying the animals that live within the mud of an intertidal mudflat. Though they're invisible from our perspective, a microscope easily reveals that these communities are very complex, diverse, and their constituent organisms, which are mostly polychaete worms like these, are quite exquisite. Spatial variability of these communities has recently emerged as an important area of study in soft sediment research. The goal of my project was to determine whether or not the community at this site was variable on different levels of scale. In order to examine this, I took samples of the mud from the mudflat bottom and identified the animals within. Though the literature suggests high levels of variability on small scales, this site showed no variability on any scale examined. This result will be an important contribution to our general knowledge of soft sediment communities and will help to shape the future development of their community structure. Thank you.
We had 2 students who graduated in December and couldn't make it here today, but their posters are up, and I probably won't give their full minute worth of justice, but Andy Booms worked in a military reservation in Virginia, establishing trapping techniques for bobcats and all the other wildlife found in that habitat. And then Maya Choi Sutton worked with a faculty development program helping university and high school educators develop place-based education in the Hudson River. So both of their posters are here, and I would be happy to answer questions about them. So now if we could have a round of applause for all of our presenters.